Audio. How's this, guys? Can you hear this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 titles for Novak Djokovic. We're good now. I've taken the external microphone out. I'm sorry if it's not high quality audio, but we've had this issue before. When this gets uploaded after the live, I'll chop off this bit. Okay, let's go again. Welcome back to the tennis vlog, and it's time to preview and predict the final between top seed Novak Djokovic and number 4 seed Daniil Medvedev. One of them an 8-time former champion, and the other one riding a 20-match winning streak. So this has the makings of a great battle. We are going to do what we always do. We're going to take a look at both paths for each man to the final, have a look at what they've done well, what they've not done so well, and especially looking at the semi-finals, which we can take a lot from, we're going to have a look at what some of the keys to the final outcome might be. So I'm glad there are people watching here live, and if you're not here live, you can catch up with this at a later date or hour, because the final is coming up quickly. So Djokovic, the top seed, Medvedev, the number 4 seed. We always start with the lower ranked player. So let's have a look at the path that Medvedev has taken to this final. He has only dropped, I'm on Djokovic, whoops. He has only dropped 2 sets so far. Both of them came in his 3rd round match against the number 28 seed Filip Krajinovic. So it was smooth sailing before that, with wins over Vasek Pospisil and Roberto Carvalhas Baena in the 2nd round. Pospisil, as we said, could have been a very difficult first matchup, because of the way he likes to move up the court and the way he can change the pace and the rhythm, which you absolutely have to do against Medvedev. But his returns were on point. He took the weapons away from Pospisil and carried that form into the 2nd round as well. And he looked to be sailing still further against Krajinovic. He was up 2 sets to love. He was looking secure in the 3rd set, but Krajinovic managed to sneak that 3rd set. And what have I said time and time and time again about Medvedev? You don't beat him, you make him beat himself, or the majority of players do anyway. And Krajinovic, just by sneaking that set, got in Medvedev's head. There was a little bit of a malfunction. Krajinovic was still using his great hand skills, pulling Medvedev back and forth, and essentially just frustrating the heck out of him. And Medvedev did drop those next 2 sets, but credit to him for coming back to win that final set 6-love, because prior to that match, Medvedev, I don't think had ever won a 5-setter. So that was a big moment for him and set him up nicely to get back into his stride for round 4, 6-4, 6-2, 6-3 over Mackenzie McDonald's. And then the quarter-final match against Andrei Rublev, the number 7 seed. A lot of people expected that to be another test for Medvedev, but their head-to-head was heavily in Medvedev's favor. It's a countryman of his. He knows his game incredibly well. And I mean, you know the results. He also beat Stefanos Tsitsipas just now in the semi-finals in straight sets. And something that both Rublev and Tsitsipas do is serve big, and they like to move up the court. And Medvedev, with his great reach and balance on the return, he can take that weapon away from them somewhat, as he did against Vasek Pospisil. So that was straight sets in the quarters for Medvedev, 7-5, 6-3, 6-2. I think you've still got to give him credit for his confidence and his mentality, because it's still a situation where he's pretty much the heavy favorite to come through, and he has to handle that and take that in his stride, which he did with the help of some big serving. Did the same against Stefanos Tsitsipas, and I struggled with that one a little bit just because of the way Tsitsipas had hung on and rebounded against Nadal, and the way that he'd found his best tennis at the back end was winning a lot of shorter points. So I felt like there wouldn't be so many openings for these 2 players within this match. And in the opening set, there weren't so many openings on the return. And for Medvedev, it was a case of serving big and then finding the moments off second serves, particularly, to extend the rallies against Tsitsipas and outlast him, because that's what Medvedev is, I say that's what Medvedev is so good at. He's good at a heck of a lot of things, but he was particularly impressive in having the upper hand in those long exchanges, the type of rallies that actually Tsitsipas was winning against Nadal. So that was huge for Medvedev to have the upper hand there. And I think at the end of the first set, he'd won 8 of the rallies that went 9 shots or over, and Tsitsipas had only won 2. So that was significantly in his advantage. Once he'd got the break for 5-4, he thumped down a few unreturned serves and he was away. And into the second set they went. He kind of carried on, similar theme. Midway through the third set, just when it looked like he was running away with it, couple of points didn't go his way. Tsitsipas managed to latch onto a couple of the longer rallies. Medvedev served a double fault. Suddenly he wasn't up a break anymore, and we saw him tighten. And it was that key factor of getting in Medvedev's head. It was partly to do with Tsitsipas' rise in level. There was also the crowd atmosphere, a lot of people getting behind Tsitsipas, which is all these factors kind of come together to be a little bit of a distraction, and you could see that Medvedev got tight. And I have to say right now, credit to him for keeping it to straight sets, because once he started to go off the boil there, I thought we might even be headed to a 5th set, because that's just how it can go with Medvedev. As we saw against Krajinovic, he can roll out of control, and he's got more into the habit of righting the ship before it goes too far. But I was impressed that he managed to do it in this third set, because prior to this, he'd just been in his vintage Medvedev form, hitting winners from wherever in the court, reaching everything on the stretch, and raining down those huge serves that have been so beneficial in the faster pace in Melbourne. But in that semi-final, later stages of the third, it looked to be getting tough. 5-all, he had to dig himself out of some service deficits. But what did he do? Upped the ante again, broke to love, served it out, sealed his spot in a Grand Slam final, the second Grand Slam final. His first Grand Slam final came in 2019. It's funny to think it was 2 years ago, a year and a half technically, but that was against Nadal. That one looked like it might almost be done in straights, and then that went the distance. So it shows you that Medvedev has not just the game but the head for these big occasions as well. And yeah, there was a moment of doubt there against Tsitsipas in the third, but all in all, steered past him pretty impressively. And we'll have a deeper look at the stats in that one when we compare them to those that Djokovic had in his semi-final against the absolute lion Aslan Karatsev. So for Djokovic, it's not been so smooth sailing, which you wouldn't generally expect to say at the Australian Open. As I've said, 8 titles won, 8 finals played. That is a major statistic that Medvedev is going up against on Sunday. But for Djokovic, you couldn't really see what was coming if you watched his first round clash. There was no foreshadowing. That was the most comfortable I've seen him look to this date. It was 6-3, 6-1, 6-2 over Jeremy Chardy. Yeah, Chardy struggled to make a dent on the top players in recent times after being something of a giant slayer back in the day, but still Djokovic was moving incredibly comfortably. He had a great strike on the ball. It was one of those matches where everything he touched just kind of turned to gold, and with the potency of his serve as well, which has been a huge cornerstone for his game in Australia. It really looks like he was on the way to something. But then he came up against Francis Tiafoe in the second round, and Tiafoe is a tough customer with the way he can go toe-to-toe in some of the longer rallies and knows when to mix it up as well. He's got good hand skills on him, good feel, and he was able to edge some of the tighter moments to get to a set-all. Djokovic took the opener 6-3, but it was 7-6 in Tiafoe's favour in the second set. Big thing there was the head game of Djokovic. And, you know, as much as the physical can be up and down, we saw him getting pretty tired at the end of last year. The head game and the mentality is still there. And that saw him remain so calm throughout that third set. Back the third set tiebreak, and it was business as usual from then on out. So he came through in 4 sets, no real cause for concern. But then at 2 sets to love up against Taylor Fritz, we had the injury situation where he slipped, pulled something, and was visibly hampered from my perspective for the next 2 sets, and stored up his energy to rain down service bombs off both first and second serves in the 5th set. Came out the right end of some long rallies, probably had a bit of help, to be honest. Fritz had him on a string and almost didn't know what to do with him, and Djokovic was able to hang in there, stay with him, and eventually win the key points to come out on top. But that's the deal that you're up against when you're facing Djokovic in Melbourne. You have to first beat him physically, 3 roadblocks that you have to get past, and that's what Medvedev is looking to have to overcome in the final. So as well as he is playing, and he's playing supremely well, it's going to be his toughest test so far. So Djokovic came through that 3rd round, but trouble was not over. He dropped a set in both his next 2 matches against the number 14 seed Milos Raonic and the number 6 seed Alexander Zverev. Still a little bit hampered, I think, in that match with Raonic, but as I've said before, he was never not going to step out and play that match. He'd had a rest instead of practicing, and he had a dominant head-to-head record over Raonic. So in a Grand Slam 4th round, you don't just let that one go. He got that win in 4, 7-6, 4-6, 6-1, 6-4, and then the match with Zverev, which is interesting to me looking back because I think Djokovic had improved physically there, and still Zverev had the advantage in sets 3 and 4. He led at least 2-love in both of those. I think he had a 3-1 or 4-1 lead in one of them as well. And there was visible frustration and agitation from Djokovic. And Zverev, he's a rising talent for a reason. He can stay with in the longer rallies. He can also move up the court convincingly behind the first serve. And he had a mix of that to cause Djokovic some trouble. Again, Djokovic dropped a tiebreak, the opening tiebreak, which shows that he's not invincible in the pressure moments, but he did take the key moments yet again at the back end of the clash. Zverev had set point on the return, I think, prior to the final tiebreak. Djokovic shoved a huge first serve, and he saw that one out in 4 sets, 6-7, 6-2, 6-4, 7-6, and then moved into the semis against the brilliant qualifier Karatsev, who, yeah, he's got qualifier next to his name. I look at these stats for this match, and I weigh them up with the same weight of value as I would weigh up Medvedev's stats, because Karatsev has played good enough tennis to make a semi, and to be honest with you, the level of tennis that he's been producing in Melbourne has been top 20 standard at the minimum. I'd go up there and say top 10, and credit to him because he's shown everyone that that talent and that potential and that ability is present outside of the realms of the people that you're used to watching if you only watch the main ATP tour. And it's all about sustaining and having consistency, and when you have your good days, essentially. So 6-3, 6-4, 6-2 Djokovic. It looks like a straightforward scoreline. It hides some pressure moments there that he had to really think his way through. Actually, early stages of the first set, I think around, sorry, my throat is going, 3-2 in the first set with Karatsev. I think Karatsev was serving first, so he was keeping his nose out in front and going toe-to-toe with Djokovic in the early stages. And we have seen little spots of agitation from Djokovic, kind of giving his frustration away during matches. We saw a little bit of that at the beginning of the first set, him wanting to rush through points, particularly on serve, you know, with how well he's serving and how many cheap points he's getting. He wanted to be quick. And I think that the key Djokovic in that game, no, Djokovic was serving first because he then got to 4-3 with a good hold of serve. And that was the key moment for Djokovic in that match, I felt, because prior to that, in the long exchanges, there'd been a lot of clean hitting. And that's what Karatsev loves. He likes to attack. He likes to be aggressive. So if he's got a clean ball to lock onto that's fractionally short, he's in a good position. And that's what Djokovic was doing for much of the beginning of the set. There weren't any slices. There weren't many even drop shots, which Djokovic loves. There was a lot of baseline rallying. And just in that game at 4-3, he had the presence of mind to change it up a bit. On the return, he sliced a few into play as opposed to clean striking them, got the depth of shot on them. And then Karatsev, he has that attacking mindset. He wants to go for the big 1-2 punch. So he found himself overhitting, and that love break for Djokovic, it might have been near the beginning of the match, but I think it was definitely a crucial moment for him just because he did look up against it and in some frustrated moments at the beginning, but once he got that break, served it out no problem, and that put him in the driver's seat for the match. Wasn't all plain sailing from there. He was 4-1, 5-1 up in the second set, Karatsev not only broke back, but actually had 2 break points when Djokovic was serving at 5-4. But once again, the mental strength of Djokovic and the service strength of Djokovic to deliver when it matters. And it's not always the first serve. The second serve, it comes down big, or it kicks out wide, or it kicks to the body, to the extent that the opponent isn't necessarily sure what to expect with it. And Djokovic has been very brave with that second delivery. And then once he was up 2-0, third set wasn't without its blips, but they came near the beginning and Djokovic steered to safety. And I think that was very crucial as well. You know, Medvedev had his drop off at the back end of his match when he was already 2-0 up. Djokovic had his lull at the back end of the second set, at the beginning of the third. So with both of them, they kept their drops in confidence and drops in form and focus to periods of the match that didn't have a massive impact. And that's really big, because however well you're playing, however confident you are not going to sustain peak concentration and focus for an entire match. And it's all about the timing. For these two, the timing has been on point so far, but something has to give, because as brilliant as they've both looked in places, there can only be one winner. The cruel brutality of tennis, there are no draws, however similar some of the stats might look. So we'll take a look at some of them in a moment. To quickly look at the head-to-head before I go into more details of weighing up their stats in the semis and look at the matchup of styles going into the final. The head-to-head is pretty close. It is 4-3 in the favor of Djokovic, with Medvedev having won their most recent meeting in the round-robin stage of the NITO ATP Finals, which, of course, Medvedev went on to win with a stainless 5-love record. So 6-3, 6-3 to Medvedev. I take that one with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Medvedev was in fiery form, but Djokovic, his fatigue was evident at that point. Didn't have much energy in his legs. I felt like, I mean, he made semis, but his serve was essentially keeping him in it. It's become such a weapon for him. And from what I recall of that match, Medvedev had him on a string, running him around the court, firing his winners out of nowhere, those outrageous angles that he can produce. Djokovic didn't get much of a look in on that occasion. So Medvedev won the last match, but Djokovic won their first 3 meetings, and noteworthy is the fact that they've played 2 best-of-5 set matches, and Djokovic has won them both. They were also near the beginning of the rivalry. So Djokovic won their first ever meeting at the Davis Cup in 2017 via retirement, though. Medvedev had taken the first set 6-3, and then Djokovic was 6-4, 6-1 in the next 2 before Medvedev retired in the 4th. They had a meeting in Eastbourne. Djokovic won in straights, semi-final. And then the Australian Open. Djokovic there a winner 6-4, 6-7, 6-2, 6-3. I think I watched that one at the time, but I had another look at the highlights, and some of the stats were very interesting at the end. Djokovic had double the number of break point opportunities to Medvedev. So Medvedev had the 9 and Djokovic had the 18. I'm not sure if Djokovic will get so many break point chances now, just because Medvedev has so much improved that aspect of his game. And of course, the court conditions are faster than those of 2 years ago because of all the tennis that's been played on them over the past few weeks. But it is something that's interesting and something that I've kept my eye on. Djokovic able to produce some stunning passing shots as well. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but I know some of the strategies that he'll want to use for this one. They've had some close ones. The 2 wins for Medvedev, other than his ATP Finals win, came in 3 sets. So in Monaco, 2019, Cincinnati 2019, Medvedev a winner in 3 sets. He dropped the middle set in Monte Carlo, and in Cincy he dropped the first set, but came through without needing to play a tiebreak. And then the most recent meeting, other than the ATP Finals, was Djokovic winning their ATP Cup clash, 6-1, 5-7, 6-4. So what we can take from that head-to-head really is it's generally been very close. I think their matchup of styles means that there aren't that many opportunities for either on the return. And yeah, they really need to lock into the key moments for this upcoming clash. So just to weigh up their stats from the semis, I was having a look to see what the key factors might be. Interesting to note their prowess on serve, just because in these conditions, Serve so crucial, particularly if you're down break point, set point. These are two guys that are able to come up with a big serve or a smart serve and see it off with a short point, which is very big when it comes to a Grand Slam final, because so much is about mentality as opposed to physicality. And I think Naomi Osaka said as much actually after she beat Jennifer Brady in today's final. The fact that, you know, you've played your way to the final, but once you're there, you've proven why you're there. It's a case of who can handle the head game better, really. So the service stats, similar percentages of first serves. Actually, both of them landed 68% of their first serves, which is a very solid number, different to the women's side where the likes of Osaka, Serena were going for so much that their percentage was quite low down. 68% very solid. Very different in percentages won in the semis. So they landed the same amount. Djokovic only won, I say only, it's a good number, but he won 71% of his first serves compared to Medvedev's 88%, which tells you a lot about how he's reining it down. Tsitsipas, I think, felt very rushed during that match when he was returning. But in terms of second serve percentages won, Djokovic about 16% higher. He's winning 62% of his first serves compared to Medvedev's 46. And I think that has a lot to do with placement and difference in speed, because of these two, Medvedev has the higher average first serve speeds. His is about 4 kilometers per hour faster. But when it comes to the second serve, Djokovic's average, we're talking averages here, Djokovic's average is about 9 kilometers per hour faster. So the moment Medvedev misses a first serve, Djokovic, one of the best returners in the game, is going to be up on top of that baseline looking for an opportunity to get onto the front foot in the rally and immediately put the pressure on. Medvedev, on the other hand, as good a returner as he is, he's going to have to try that bit harder on the return and be that bit more careful with it as well, with the general unpredictability of the Djokovic second serve and not knowing how it's going to come down. So service stats, always important. You can't play a rally without playing the serve, and it can turn out to be a very big factor. Break points, though. Break points is big because it shows where the mentality is at in the big moments. Djokovic saved 3 of the 5 break points he faced and converted 6 of 7, very clean percentage. Medvedev saved 2 of 3, very strong, little bit less on the conversion rate. He converted 5 of 9. I do think that conversion rate dropped down though when Tsitsipas really started to rev his serve up at the back end of the match, started to get into a flow, and Medvedev was missing quite a few of the returns, so he was up against it there. Not so many showings at the net for both of them, but I think Djokovic will want to change that up, particularly in this next match. In terms of length of rally, and I think this could get very important, both dominated the shorter rallies. I think that has a lot to say about how they're backing up behind the serve with the 1-2 punches. Djokovic won more rallies between the length of 5 to 8 shots than Medvedev, but Medvedev had distinctly the upper hand when it came to 9 shots plus in the rallies. He was 19 winning them to Tsitsipas 7. Djokovic, meanwhile, if rallies went to 9 shots or above, he was winning 12. Karatsev was winning 11. So that was very close, and there were actually some key moments in that second set where Djokovic was outlasted in the longer exchanges. Why is that important? It's because generally over the years, that's what Djokovic has been so good at, his flexibility, his ability to bounce back on the stretch, to have great timing to redirect pace, use angles, find the placement if someone's moving up the court to get himself back onto the front foot. But Medvedev is definitely a player that can neutralize that, as I mentioned, with his kind of angles on the return, with the way he can penalize a player that's moving up the court, and just with his general balance across the baseline. He's a tall guy, Medvedev. I don't have it in front of me, but I think he's 6'6", and he's got a big stride on him, but moves really well for his height as well. And we saw that tremendous backhand up the line passing shot winner that got him in the position to serve for the match against Stefanos Tsitsipas. He'd covered the cross-court ground stroke on the complete other side of the court, and he timed that one beautifully up the line. Djokovic is going to be in trouble if these rallies go beyond the realm of about 0 to 6, 7, 8 shots. He doesn't want to be in so many of those longer exchanges, which is strange to say about Djokovic, but the reality is that in Melbourne, he's much preferred it when the rallies have been of a shorter length and more tightly under his control. And that has a lot to say about how well he's serving, but it also has a lot to say about the standard of the likes of Zverev and Karatsev and Medvedev, who really are so secure when they're on the run and on the stretch. Medvedev particularly is problematic when the rally stretches because he can generate those winners and those angles out of nowhere. He's such an unorthodox player. It's very hard to read where he's going to go from his backswing and from his positioning, and he can take the ball quite early. So with the depth of shot he's able to produce as well, Djokovic really doesn't want to get sucked into too many of those longer rallies. If he is sucked into them and if he does have to play them, it is essential for him to mix it up. I mentioned with his match against Karatsev at the beginning, a lot of clean hitting, and if anything was fractionally short, Karatsev would look to get on top of that. What Djokovic did well was start to utilize the slice. Just change it up a bit, mix it up, mix up those clean strikes with the slices and that kind of thing. And against Medvedev, really, that is how I've seen him beaten when he was in good form. He was in terrific form when he lost in 5 sets to Nadal in the US Open final. He'd won the Masters event ahead of it. He'd come through some key opposition during the event. Nadal was on the ropes in the 5th, and what did he do? Backhand slice, again and again and again, just to disrupt the rhythm of Medvedev and ensure that he didn't have anything to crack down on to lock into, because at the end of the day, it's a Grand Slam final. However confident Medvedev is, however much he knows he's the underdog, there is going to be some tightness there, some nerves, especially if he really gets into the match, if he's a set up or a set all. It's as much his title to win as Djokovic's, and to think that he would be immune to all kinds of nerves is, I don't think that's right. I think that both of these two are going to have some awareness of that kind of thing. So Djokovic, if he is pulled into those longer rallies, really needs to make Medvedev play and keep the depth on his shots if he's striking clean. What Djokovic can do is try and pull Medvedev up to the forecourt and pass him while he's off balance. But if he's going to do that, the drop shot needs to be so acute. Actually, on my match notes for the match, Djokovic versus Karatsev, I wrote down at one stage, the drop shot ain't good, because Djokovic was just not striking it close enough to the net. You know, he likes to play that shot, and when it's close to the net, it's a great shot. But if he sends it fractionally further inside the service box, that's the kind of shot that Medvedev is going to run on top of and strike a winner off it if he's feeling his game. So if Djokovic is going to want to try and move Medvedev up the court, it's essential that he doesn't just drop a shot halfway, because Medvedev will eat that up for dinner. And yeah, he's got to be careful with that, but he definitely does have the strategic thinking, I think, to work his way through this. I think sets could well be tight with how comprehensive these two have been on serve when they've needed to be. I think that scoreboard pressure therefore might play a part. It's going to be beneficial to be serving first in a set and have that 5-4 or 6-5 lead at the back end of a set to try and open the doors a bit. But a lot of this does balance everything out with each other, and it's a matchup that I've been thinking about for a while. Medvedev, I didn't really know who would come through from the bottom half of the draw. Obviously, I picked Djokovic ahead of the event to win it. Medvedev, he was the leader of the kind of outsiders for me, outside of Djokovic, Nadal, and Thiem, just because of his form and because of the way he backs himself. And the way he's so complete. I saw someone ask recently, what's Medvedev's biggest weapon? Medvedev doesn't have a biggest weapon. He is the weapon. He's like a pocket knife, and you take out all these little blades from it, and he's such a complete player. He has the big serve. He has the ability to generate ridiculous angles and winners from nowhere inside the baseline on the stretch. And it is really a case of throwing him off his rhythm and getting inside his head. Big question is, can Djokovic do that? Does he have the level? Djokovic has been in some tight moments throughout the tournament. Moments where I think if Medvedev had faced him in quarterfinals or semi-finals, or let's say fourth round or quarters, I think Medvedev would have had him, and it probably wouldn't have had to go down the wire for it. I think he'd have finished him off. But Djokovic has just moved into a final where he's never lost. 8 Australian Open finals played and 8 Australian Open finals won for Djokovic. And we've seen what that kind of mentality does for Rafael Nadal at Roland Garros. It doesn't really matter if you haven't hit your peak stride. If you can get there, there is a cushion of so much confidence, and the importance of that cannot be overlooked. If I'm honest, from what I've seen of these two, of their peaks, Medvedev's peak has been more impressive. When he's found his footing and has been on song, there have been moments where he looks unbeatable. And for that reason, I completely understand why a lot of people are predicting him to win. Actually, all the polls that I looked at were heavily in Medvedev's favor. I don't know whether that was just a fan supporter thing or whether people are generally leaning Medvedev here. But I completely understand it with his form, with the number of top caliber opponents that have been among his 20 match wins to get to the position that he's in now. Little stat, if he wins against Djokovic, he'll be on a 21 match win streak, which is the same as women's champion Naomi Osaka. So that's interesting. But at the end of the day, it's a close clash. Both players have generally risen up in the key moments. Both of them have generally kept their little blips in form to periods of the match that don't ultimately count. But Medvedev is the riskier pick here, I think, because I figure this will be a long match, and I don't see him sustaining his top focus and top level throughout the match. If he wins in straight sets, all good, but I don't think this is going to be a straight sets clash. I think it's going to go further. And as much as I genuinely think that this could be Medvedev's time, what better time than when you're on a 20-match winning streak? And Djokovic, hasn't always looked his best. Djokovic has been so strong, particularly with the serve in the moments that matter. And with the record that he has in Melbourne finals, it makes Medvedev the riskier pick. And I don't think I can go with the riskier option when he's up against a guy that's never lost at this stage. Plus, I picked Djokovic to win before the event. So could be very close, this one. But as far as the prediction goes for me, I think I have to stick with my pick before the event, which is Djokovic. He's maneuvered his way through some tough moments, and he knows he just has to play one good match now to get the trophy. But he could be in it for the long haul. So for this prediction, I'm going to say Djokovic to win, but to win in 5 sets, because I can't really see Medvedev going down without making an impact. And if Medvedev wins the whole thing, credit to him. He will so have earned it. And I think it will be a great thing for the sport to see that someone of that kind of ability can sustain and keep that going. And if it's not now, it certainly has to be at some point in the near future for Medvedev. But I'm not going to back against Djokovic's mental dominance at this tournament. So Djokovic for me, and we'll see how that one plays out. Thank you very much for watching. It has been a longer video, but there was a lot to delve into there. For what it's worth, I think Medvedev has a very good mindset coming into this one. He spoke candidly at the end of his semi-final victory over Tsitsipas about how a win over Djokovic on this stage is going to take peak mental and physical performance for 4 or 5 hours. But he also spoke about how Djokovic is the player with everything to lose, and he's kind of the player with everything to gain. So he's got that good underdog mentality that could serve him well. But at this point in time, I'm just not brave enough to call against Djokovic. I think that with his serve and with his mentality, he should have enough, but could go either way. So looking forward to seeing how it plays out. Thank you for watching. I see a lot of people have been talking in the chat, but if you're coming at a later date, leave a comment and let me know who you think comes through. And yeah, that's it for the tournament in terms of preview and predictions, but I've seen a few requests for me to do a roundup and talk about what happens in the finals. So I might be back for that. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, do that now to stay tuned. And we'll see how this goes. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.